In 2014, SyFy launched Z Nation, a post-apocalyptic series that seemed, at first glance, like just another zombie show. While The Walking Dead was dominating television with its self-serious survival horror, Z Nation was busy proving that the apocalypse didn't have to be a complete downer. Sure, its military uniforms looked like they came from a Halloween store, and sometimes the writing was questionable, at best, we'll just say that, but that was part of its charm. The show never reached The Walking Dead's massive audience, and honestly, it probably scared away as many viewers as it attracted. But for those of us who stuck around, it offered something special. The premise was simple enough. 3 years after a zombie virus devastates America, a group of survivors must escort Murphy, the only known human to survive a zombie bite, from New York to California. His blood might hold the key to a vaccine, something that drives the plot for all 5 seasons. What started as a clear-cut zombie action military science fiction show somehow morphed into an apocalyptic drama with both religious and intensely patriotic undertones. Beneath its gore and dark humor, Z Nation did something far more interesting than just adding to the zombie genre. I don't think it was at all intentional, but somehow, hear me out, somehow the show developed into an astonishingly complex meditation on human nature, divine election, and the possibility of redemption. Themes that mirror, with surprising precision, the theological framework of Calvinism. I say this was likely unintentional, based solely on the reputation of Hollywood writers as being secular folk. I have no particular knowledge of the 17 credited writers of the series, but I like to think one of them was at least secretly raised a Calvinist, and maybe they were using the episode scripts to work through some stuff. There are many types of Christians in these United States, but Calvinism is one of the strictest and most demanding of its adherents. It also has a pretty dark view of human nature, teaching that all humans are corrupted by sin from birth, and that only a predetermined elect will be saved. All humans, even the Virgin Mary, Lord have mercy, deserve to burn in eternal hellfire for the filth of their sins. Salvation, admittance to heaven, comes entirely through divine grace, rather than through human merit or choice. These ideas, which gained traction in America through early preachers like Jonathan Edwards, profoundly shaped early American religious and political thought, and hold sway even today. Even in zombie shows, Z Nation takes these centuries-old theological concepts and reimagines them for the apocalypse. Everyone is infected with the zombie virus, including babies, a literal version of original sin. Murphy, a selfish criminal, is unwillingly chosen as humanity's savior, an elect marked by his blue skin, and then white skin, and then red skin, as well as special powers he never asked for and really never wanted. Even the show's signature phrase, "I give you mercy," turns the concept of divine grace into a bullet to the head. This seemingly pulpy show tackles more profound questions than it deserves to, specifically about human nature, predestination, and the possibility of redemption. And all that fire and brimstone intersects with distinctly American ideas about democracy, individual liberty, and the dream of building a better world from the ashes of the old. It should go without saying, but I love this show. Let's get into it. One thing Z Nation makes abundantly clear from start to finish is that the zombies are merely an environmental hazard. It's humans who are the problem. Humans who are evil. The zombies are just hungry. This moral framework emerges through the numerous cults and religious movements that form in the apocalypse's wake, each revealing how quickly humanity descends into depravity when social constraints dissolve. And the heroes of our show are not exempted from that judgment. Season 1 opens 3 years into the zombie apocalypse with a military unit transporting Murphy, a former guest of the federal prison system, who survived being bitten by zombies after receiving an experimental vaccine. Their mission? Get him across the country to a lab in California where his blood might save humanity. Leading this makeshift team is Roberta Warren, a former National Guard lieutenant who commands with competence and dedication. Initially, she's joined by Charles Garnett, but he doesn't last long, I'm sorry to say. Even heroes are disposable in the apocalypse. They're joined by Doc, a former addiction counselor who is a delight from start to finish, the stoner grandpa you always wished you had. Then there's 10K, a teenage sharpshooter whose name comes from the fact that he counts his zombie kills like a scorecard, and he intends to get to 10,000 of them. Rounding out the main group are Addie and Mac, a young couple who meet on the first day of the apocalypse and just kind of stayed together. This is the central cast who we grow to care about, even love. But they're not immune from the curse of humanity's selfishness. Warren, our fearless leader, even goes so far as to steal from the Amish in one episode. Zombies aren't the only environmental hazard in post-apocalyptic America, as you can imagine. Far from it. And Addie and 10K stumble into some anthrax, the symptoms of which can be successfully treated by a sufficient dose of ciprofloxacin. Many of the Amish are already suffering from anthrax exposure.
It is not safe for you here. The white powder? We have anthrax here.
Now, the good news is they have Cipro.
What's she giving you? Cipro.
But only enough to completely treat 2 people. And there are far more than 2 infected Amish. The Walking Dead had their fair share of moral quagmires, but I'm not sure we ever saw Rick rob nice Amish boys at gunpoint. It doesn't feel nice to see, especially since we know all those nice Amish people are going to die and then turn. But in our fallen world, sometimes there are no good choices. Condemn a girl to forced prostitution and allow a cannibal cult to thrive, or risk all of humanity by endangering the sole carrier of a potential vaccine. Stop a man-murdering female supremacist cult, or allow your friend to truly escape the apocalypse. There are no good choices, and no good people. Which is why, in order to become the elect, humans, at least in the world of Z Nation, must evolve into something else, something greater, something perhaps chosen by God. The very presence of the apocalypse, in and of itself, is a heavy mental load to bear for humanity's survivors. Each member of the main group had to see their friends and loved ones turned into zombies. In the case of Addie and 10K, they had to mercy their parents personally to save themselves. The concept of giving mercy, delivering a headshot to a zombie, is called the 8th sacrament from episode 1, something every surviving human takes very seriously and solemnly. The few humans who live to old age must go so far as to either kill themselves or ask someone to do it for them, lest they die of natural causes in turn. I give you mercy begins as a practical necessity in Z Nation, a headshot to prevent zombification, but it quickly evolves into something more sacred, what the show explicitly calls the 8th sacrament, which is oddly a distinctly Catholic designation, as Protestant denominations, including Calvinism, only have 2 sacraments, the Lord's Supper and baptism. Religious mishmashing aside, we see the weight of this sacredness most clearly when Warren gives mercy to Garnett, her lover and her leader, transforming an act of necessity into one of grace. The burden of this duty falls differently on each character. When Addie must give mercy to Mac, her longtime partner, it nearly breaks her. 10K's promise to his father to give him mercy shapes his entire character. It happens even before the start of the show. Even Murphy, who often mocks these human rituals, respectfully asks Warren to give mercy to Serena, his baby's mother. What do you do in a world like that? Well, maybe you join a cult. And there are so many to choose from. Jacob's Resurrection, the Red Hand, the Sisters of Mercy. They all have their own message, their own idea of what humanity should be in order to survive. The concept of a God-shaped hole in the human soul is plain to see in the writing, with even Murphy forming his own cult of sorts, establishing Murphytown in Season 3, where followers, including grown men, willingly submit to his bite. Why do people submit to it? Because whatever zombie blend Murphy's bite turns them into takes away their fear, something they've never escaped in the years since the start of the outbreak.
Do you remember what you were before he bit you?
Yeah. Afraid. That's what I was. But not anymore.
What might you do to escape a fear like that? Murphy, who was never inclined to stick his neck out for others, finds out how good it feels to have people willing to die for you, And his growing messiah complex reveals how easily charismatic leadership can exploit human desperation. Warren, accustomed to being in charge, has her own ideas about what humanity is, driving her to try and take Murphy out at one point, something he is thankfully able to stop. "What did you think saving the world was going to look like?" he asks her. It's a good question, and Warren didn't really have an answer. But watching these two would-be messiahs arguing over what kind of humans deserve salvation mirrors the Calvinist concept of election. Who receives grace, and who remains condemned? And how do mere mortals presume to do the choosing? By season 5, with the emergence of talkers, which are conscious zombies who retain their humanity through brain consumption, awkward, the show completes its examination of fallen human nature. The conflict between humans and talkers in Numerica reveals that even after experiencing apocalyptic judgment, humanity still divides, discriminates, and destroys. As Addie grimly observes, Numerica would be a much better place if we got rid of all the people. The cults of Z Nation are a threat to our main group, but in looking at the kinds of lives the survivors have, it's not hard to figure out their appeal.
He's our last best hope for humanity.
Kill him.
No rest for the wicked is taken seriously in this show, and a common refrain is how there is no escape from the wickedness all around them. The lack of rest, the impossibility of putting your guard down and relaxing for even 1 second wears on the characters over time, and you can see how it changes them. In Season 1, Episode 5, the show opens with the group holed up in a suburban house. They have a brief imitation of normalcy, with Warren and Garnett enjoying coffee and chatting about the good old days. Addie and Mac get some time for intimacy, but make sure they don't completely undress or take their shoes off. It's risky to be naked, you see. They are always ready to run. They bring up these little world-building tidbits without dwelling on them. It's just reality, and we can experience it with them. Periodically, it will be all too much for a character. Each one has their turn, even Warren, after the death of Garnett, leaving it to Murphy, of all people, to shake some sense into her. We all have PTSD. I can't make it without you. You're the leader. His words end up being prophetic later in the show, as it becomes apparent that no one in this group will follow anyone else. She has to be the leader. She can't check out, and she can't choose. The choosing has already been done. Addie is another character that has a moment where she thinks she can just check out of the apocalypse. She can wave her hand and say, "No, thank you. That's enough zombies for me." By the time we get to the 11th episode, Addie's cracks have already started to show. She's dissociating and having flashbacks of having to mercy her mother.
Eddie, what happened?
I know what the flashbacks are. I killed my mom.
She's pushing away Mac. Even though he clearly cares for her, she casts doubt on their relationship, saying, "We don't even know each other, and we're trauma bonded," diminishing the strength of their bond because she fears losing him. And she's trying to get ahead of that. So when the group stumbles upon a group of women holed up in what looks to be paradise, Addie decides to just stay with the sisters. She's sick of the violence, sick of always being in danger. Who cares if the sisters send away their male children upon their 13th birthday to be devoured by zombies? Who cares if they attack and rob men, also leaving them to be killed by zombies? She's tired. So Addie leaves the group. She leaves Mac, which hurts him horribly. "I cannot go back out there and watch you die," she tells him. She does love him, but feels hopeless. She still hasn't dealt with killing her mother, and she won't entertain losing Mac. So she makes him lose her. Mac won't leave her, so he stays behind, taking fire from the man-hating sisters.
No.
It's not clear in the moment whether he survives, but at the start of the next season, we're all happy to see that he did, and he's right there waiting for Addie outside the compound as it burns to the ground. Addie's paradise is gone.
They're all dead.
The escape hatch she thought she found? Ashes. The chickens came home to roost for the sisters, as one of the boys they kicked out last season came back for revenge when he realized he'd been lied to his whole life. He set the place on fire, and he released the zombie bear. Mac doesn't demand an apology. And Addie doesn't grovel, just quietly gets on the back of his motorcycle. She couldn't hide. The respite she found, only temporary. And you can see the shift in Addie. She's never quite the same after that. In a way, it's good she hardened her heart against ever finding peace, as I suspect it made it just a bit easier when the time came to face her greatest fear. Watching Mac be killed by a horde of zombies. He couldn't fight them all off, and Addie couldn't get to him in time. She broke down the door just in time to see him turn, and she had to give him mercy. There was no overt grief from Addie in the following episode. I think she'd already mourned Mac's loss when she joined the sisters, and after they reunited, it was like she was just waiting for what she knew what was coming. Safety, happiness, love. These are only fleeting interruptions to the danger, torment, and fear. Sergeant Lily was another character who later joined the group for one season, and it looked like she and 10K would be the cutest, gun-toting, zombie-killing couple. But no, her stay was short, and her loss was deeply felt. Her heroism, fearlessness, and her bond with 10K made her loved despite her short tenure on the show. A Marine, a pixie-cut sporting tomboy, a badass shot with a love for life and fierce loyalty. All that made it hurt when she blew herself to smithereens. Completely eradicating herself to protect 10K, who had already cast her aside to get back with the girlfriend he thought was dead. There would be no waking up as a talker for Lily, no being one of the elect for her. Though in her case, perhaps that would be better, so as not to watch the man she loved ditch her without a thought. And no, I'm not taking this personally as a red-headed Marine who also got dumped like garbage by a boy named Tommy when I was 20. That's not what's happening here. How dare you say that? The origins of Z Nation's apocalypse are not natural. The ZN1 virus didn't come to us by way of fungus or bacteria. It was created as a bioweapon, and then it went airborne, infecting every life form on Earth. Yes, animals become zombies too. But unlike traditional zombie stories, the infection doesn't immediately turn people into zombies. Instead, it lies dormant until death, any death, regardless of whether it involves being bitten by a zombie. At which point, reanimation is inevitable, unless they get mercied with a shot to the head. Enter Murphy. When the outbreak hit, he was a prisoner who, volunteered at gunpoint for an experimental vaccine trial. Out of 8 test subjects, he alone survived being bitten by zombies. But this salvation came at a cost. His skin turned blue, his personality changed, and he gained the ability to communicate with and control the dead. Murphy is a riveting character, played to perfection by Keith Allen. Murphy's a slimeball, let it be known, and he belonged in prison. Though he's charming and he's fun, just as long as you're not too uptight about the rules. He shows signs of grandiosity early on in the show, describing himself as wrongly convicted. Spoiler alert, he was not. And even going so far as to say he volunteered for the vaccine trials because, quote, I needed to do what was right. None of that was true, but he wants people to like him, to think that he's honorable, even a hero, and he knows what to say to make that happen. But in reality, he's a selfish scumbag, and he can't hide it for any length of time, making him one of the most unlikely of chosen ones. The capriciousness of who is elected and who isn't is on full display from the very beginning. Death can come at any moment, from any cause. Major characters like Garnett and Mac die suddenly and brutally. Others, like Doc and 10K, survive seemingly unsurvivable situations. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Much like Calvinist election, survival appears arbitrary, predetermined by forces beyond human understanding.
These visions that you're having, don't ignore them.
Nor is there any reason why Murphy himself was chosen as the first elect. Like I said, zombies, the original kind anyway, not talkers, are more of a plague than anything else. They are damnation incarnate, former human souls who, by the way, remember who they used to be, wandering the earth with an unslakable hunger, never again allowed to have their humanity. And then there's Murphy. He's not human, he's not a zombie, but something else. He's the chosen one, though quite unwillingly. Starting in season 1, we see that the side effect from the vaccine Murphy got extend well beyond his blue skin. He can feel zombies, their emotions. He can control them to a certain extent, even communicate with them and get them to do his bidding, something that makes him very valuable. But he also feels a kinship with them, a connection, something he struggles with among humans, even those protecting him. At one point in the show, Warren tells him he'll need to choose between being a zombie and a human. He takes the message to heart at the time, but in fact, he didn't need to choose at all, because he was something else entirely. And once he discovers that he can change humans simply by biting them, his unwillingness to embrace his role as the elect starts to fade, and Warren's resistance to his status as chosen one disappears entirely over the course of the show. Warren says to Murphy, "The moment I saw you, I knew you were my mission. I had the sense that you were my destiny." And so he was. He is the elect, and through his bite, he brings others into the elect. He also brings Warren along, though unintentionally on that part. Sharing Murphy's blood, along with some medical tampering, gives Warren a taste of being one of the elect in season 4, when she begins experiencing prophetic visions of a black rainbow. These visions, we later learn, were implanted in her mind while she was in a coma, a literal programming of the elect. Like Murphy, she was chosen without her consent for a larger purpose she didn't initially understand. It's something that deepened their bond. Prior to being infected with Murphy's blood and experiencing her visions, Warren had a military mindset, which makes sense. This is your task. Just shut up and get on with it. Stop complaining. But she finds out for herself that having a divine mission isn't quite so simple. Though I do wish we'd gotten some kind of explanation as to why her hair turned entirely white when she woke up from her coma, and why it had turned black again when she woke up after the drone crash in season 5. Unless, of course, there isn't one. Not a scientific one, anyway.
We'll be right back.
They warned her about the house next door. They warned her about the men who lived there. But she didn't listen. Experience the horror. Prepare yourself for Black Magic's Prey. Featuring ancient Mexican witchcraft, demonic possession, forbidden rituals, virgin sacrifice, and supernatural revenge. Starring the mysterious Luis, the innocent Tess, and the deranged Enrique. Warning, this book contains scenes of witchcraft, violence, bisexual women, demonic imagery, and disturbing rituals not recommended for the weak of heart. Black Magic's Prey. When evil marks you as its own, there is no escape. Available now at Amazon, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble. Rated R. No one under 17 admitted.
The thing that makes salvation special is that it's not for everyone. Maybe not even for most people. Only the chosen few. And you can't hide from your fate one way or the other. Season 1 shows us a new religion, a new theology, one where death is no longer to be feared, but to be embraced. The eternal hellfire that you and I fear, and by extension death, has been replaced by the all too real hell of being left to wander the earth as a mindless, flesh-eating zombie. Could there be any greater separation from God? Citizen Z, a former intelligence operative who does what he can to look out for the group, in his own way, acts as a guardian angel, whispering guidance across whatever frequencies he can in order to get the group to the promised land. The saddest rumination, one frequently voiced by our main characters, is the lack of hope of anything better. If there's nothing beyond the zombified hellscape, that means there's no heaven. There's only the sweet release of death, and often, the human mind can't fathom not existing. That's enough to shut a person down. The scarcity of salvation becomes a major plot point in Season 3, when we discover that the CDC has been operating from a submarine, producing limited batches of vaccine exclusively for Zona's elite. Murphy's blood was never intended to be used for a vaccine for everyone, just for the billionaires and their minions who secreted themselves from the apocalypse. This too mirrors the Calvinist concept of limited atonement, The idea that salvation is inherently exclusive. It's not universal. Within Calvinism, there's enough atonement in Christ's sacrifice on the cross to cover every sin ever committed. The sacrifice is sufficient. But the thing is, Christ suffered to redeem particular people, not just to make atonement available for whoever took him up on it. Jesus died knowing exactly who he was dying for and saving. Ponder that for a minute. The people of Zona have other ideas, though. They are so determined to elect themselves as humanity's last saviors that they dig up the Black Rain bioweapon in Season 4, determined to kill every last biological entity outside of Zona. Obviously, this is their plan, not God's, which is probably why it didn't succeed as they hoped.
I'll find Warren. We'll meet you back in America.
So, just New America?
By Season 5, we see this theological framework evolve in a new direction with the introduction of talkers, those conscious zombies who retained their humanity, though they have to consume brains or specially formulated Z-biscuits. These biscuits do contain processed brain matter, but it comes to light that lithium is the secret ingredient that helps them stay sane. It becomes the literal bread of life, but like any precious resource in the apocalypse, they're strictly rationed. The production of Z-biscuits becomes a central plot point in the last season, with their manufacture controlled by a small group of survivors in the Canadian wilderness. When the supply line is disrupted, intentionally, we see the horrific consequences. Talkers reverting to mindless, brain-hungry zombies. The message is clear. Salvation is dependent on a continuous supply of grace. It can be withdrawn at any time. This scarcity creates moral dilemmas that the show refuses to resolve simply. Even Murphy, who could theoretically create an unlimited number of blends, chooses to be selective. His Murphytown becomes another exclusive community, where salvation through his bite is a privilege granted to the useful few. As he tells his followers, not everyone deserves to be saved. Yeah, he said that right out loud, and as much as it chafes to say, he's right. If salvation in Z Nation is limited, the transformation it brings is absolutely irresistible. God's saving grace, when given to those he has chosen, is so powerful that it overcomes any human resistance and ensures their salvation, and no character embodies this more dramatically than Murphy. His evolution from wisecracking convict to zombie messiah unfolds like a dark mirror of religious conversion. Warren's own transformation through grace comes via her prophetic visions. After waking from a coma in Zona, she's haunted by images of a black rainbow and flesh-eating rain. These visions drive her eastward, compelling her actions against her own reasoning. Like Murphy, she can't resist the path that she's been chosen for. But the reverse is also true. Those not elected for salvation are forever barred from paradise, or in the case of this show, evolution to the next stage, no matter how deserving they may seem to us. We meet Vasquez in Season 2 as a bounty hunter looking for Murphy, only to find out, Preezy, he was in the DEA, hunting a dangerous drug cartel called the Zeros. Turns out the cartel did not like him hunting them, so they kidnapped his wife and daughter, and they killed them. Their funeral was day one of the apocalypse, and he saw them turn. You can imagine he was never right again. You would think Vasquez would be one of our heroes, an elect. He's strong, he's brave, hell, he's handsome, but he isn't chosen. You know who was? Escorpion, the vicious cartel assassin who murdered Vasquez's family. Played by Emilio Rivera, who shot to fame after his turn in the Sons of Anarchy, Escorpion starts off as just a regular cartel badass. High-ranking, yes, and he makes several guest appearances throughout the season. But at the end of Season 2, one of his tattoos makes it clear that he is in fact the murderer of Vasquez's family, and he intends to have his vengeance, even if it endangers the other members of the group. Warren stops him from shooting Escorpion to protect the rest of them from the cartel, but that's not the end of their conflict. As Escorpion interrogates Vasquez, we start to notice that this horrible cartel murderer is distinctly uncomfortable when the murder of Vasquez's daughter comes up. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to cop to it, even though it was most certainly him. He did that. The ensuing fight between Escorpion and Vasquez was as nasty as it deserved to be, and the coup de grace is when Escorpion is dropped into a pit of zombies, like being cast into hell. But he didn't die. The end of Season 2 brings an insane fight scene with the Zeros laying siege to the group, and they're almost overrun, only for Escorpion to save Warren from certain death, holding out his hand to her like Jesus to St. Peter. He has a halo of light behind his head and everything. He also submits to Vasquez, allowing him to kill him if he wants, understanding that he deserves to die for what he's done. For whatever reason, Vasquez doesn't kill him. He leaves the group behind, a somewhat dazed look on his face. He only ever wanted revenge for his family and the bounty on Murphy. He got neither. There's nothing for him now. It is Escorpion who has redemption waiting for him, and he is reborn as Hector, the name his mother gave him. Reborn in repentance. I like to think that Hector would have stayed with the group to the end, as I'm sure you can tell he's one of my favorite characters. But alas, he dies the very next season. Emilio Rivera had another show pilot get picked up, so either by contract or by preference, he left Z Nation and went to gang-related. A shame, in my opinion. But through his prolonged departure, we got some amazing reflections on redemption from him. The group encounters a new cult called the Red Hand, and they're being led by someone calling himself
El Scorpion?
It's not Scorpion anymore. Just Hector.
Escorpion. This obviously concerns Hector, who is calling himself a Scorpion since Hector cast off that moniker. Ultimately, Roberta makes the call to go looking for the Red Hand, hoping to persuade them to be her backup when she lays siege to Murphytown. But Hector is palpably afraid of finding out who this new Escorpion is, and what he'll ask of Roberta when they find him. He'll change you more than you'll change him, Hector insists, talking about Escorpion like a separate entity. Like a demon. Roberta and the group are permitted an audience with Escorpion after being tested by zombie combat, much like the Zeros did. Odd coincidence that. Shocker of shocks, Escorpion is Vasquez, something that shakes Roberta to her core. He doesn't remember them, or himself. Not even Hector. He is completely consumed by the identity of Escorpion, ruthless killer of all who he deems worthy of death, as if he were God. The Red Hand is as vicious as the drug cartel ever was, but with a religious zeal to them, rather than protecting their profit. Roberta tries to remind Vasquez that they were friends, telling him about the time she saved his life. And she gives him the kiss she always wanted to, but didn't, because she knew he wouldn't last. None of them do. Vasquez seems troubled, but unmoved. There's no getting through whatever's gone haywire in Vasquez, either a complete psychotic break, or perhaps a demon possession. Ultimately, it's all for nothing, and both Vasquez and Hector are killed in their fight. It's only after being mortally wounded that Vasquez seems to come back to himself, as his last word is mercy, and she obliges, though it savages her like nothing since Barnett. Hector dies too, but his last words are, "It's okay, Roberta." Both men are relieved to be dead, but only one of them might be among the elect. I say might be because the last shot we get of Hector is of him lying alone on the floor of the Red Hand's compound, when suddenly his eyes snap open. Is he a regular Z, one of the damned? Or is he something else thanks to an experimental vaccine? We never find out, in a loose end that feels like so much in the world of Z Nation, frankly unfair. There's so much about Z Nation that works, that made it stand out from anything else in the zombie genre. The cold opens are something to behold, and I think we have Asylum Films to thank for those. Asylum has a long history of producing indie horror, including 2013's Sharknado, which also aired on SyFy. It's also why we got the great line of, "It ain't sharks." Where The Walking Dead treats its apocalypse with grave seriousness, Z Nation smuggles profound religious themes inside a wrapper of deliberate camp and over-the-top gore. Even the most dramatic of episodes take a moment to inject some flamboyance, usually in the form of a guest star or in the strange circumstances the group finds themselves in. In Season 2, Episode 9, Corporate Retreat, I have to say this is one of my favorites. When the group takes refuge in what used to be an office building to escape a dust storm and a swarm of zombies, they find a group of corporate retreaters who have been there since the apocalypse broke out. Anthony Michael Hall guest stars as the worst kind of guy at your office, with the whole gaggle of them slinging corpo speak, making decisions in exaggerated bureaucracy, and engaging in circular, passive-aggressive conversations. If you've ever worked in a corporate office and you had to do team-building exercises, you will know how perfect this episode is. It shows how these people cemented their corporate identities as a defense mechanism, forgetting all other elements of their personalities. Who they were at work became who they were. Honestly, they became kind of a cult in their own way, and even though it was one of many filler episodes, perhaps too many, you didn't feel like you were being kept from the main story with that one. The focal point of Z Nation is, of course, Warren and Murphy's relationship, which at first seems simple. She's the reluctant shepherd, he's the unwilling savior. Warren sees Murphy as a mission, not a man, a package to be delivered to California, humanity's hope. Murphy, in turn, views Warren as just another authority figure forcing him down a path he never chose. But something shifts as they face shared dangers, and Murphy grows to respect Warren as a leader. Partly because he sees that she's up to the job, but more because he knows it's a job he doesn't want. Season 3 seems like a point of no return for Murphy when he starts biting people, starting with 10K, turning them into zombie blends with minimal free will and setting up his own version of humanity. Roberta ain't having it, and is willing to kill him, as she's dedicated to preserving humanity as it was. But when Murphy's daughter Lucy is kidnapped by Zona forces, they both stand down and they work together. Like the saying goes, real recognize real, and in this case, they each recognize the other as someone marked by destiny without their consent. Their love-hate relationship is complex, but it's not surprising that when Warren wakes up from her coma at the beginning of season 4, Murphy is smiling over her. He's seemingly cured from the Z virus, no longer blue-skinned, and he's genuinely happy to see her awake. He doesn't just trust her, he likes her. And though Warren is less inclined to show it, the feeling is mutual. By the final season, their bond transcends their original worlds. In season 5, Warren gets a brief respite from the apocalypse. After the drone she was hiding in crashes, she's rescued by a man named Cooper, played by Mario Van Peebles, who has seemingly just decided not to age. Hear me when I tell you this man was an adult when I was born. When Murphy tracks Warren to Cooper's farm, Cooper hits Murphy over the head and leaves him for dead. He's happy with Roberta, and he doesn't want her to leave. And he knows that she will if she realizes Murphy has come looking for her. Roberta is so angry at Cooper for his betrayal that she attacks him and leaves with Murphy, even though she genuinely loved Cooper and she was happy with him. Her mission, her destiny, comes first, and that's Murphy. Maybe that realization was why she was finally able to tell Murphy how she felt. I love you too, Murphy.
I love you too, Murphy.
They're not really on the same path anymore by this point in the show, but they'll always be linked. Their evolution mirrors the show's larger themes about transformation and predestination. Both are changed by forces beyond their control. Both resist and then accept their destinies. Both maintain their essential humanity while becoming something more than human. They are, in many ways, two sides of the same coin, unwilling saints in an apocalyptic gospel. While The Walking Dead asks, how can we maintain our humanity? Z Nation asks, what comes after humanity? It's a show where the heroes regularly commit terrible acts, where the villains sometimes have the most sensible plans, and where nobody's moral compass quite points true north. Our protagonists lie, they steal, they murder, and occasionally engage in some light cannibalism. Not exactly the behavior you'd expect from a show steeped in Protestant theology. This is why I said at the beginning that the mirroring of Calvinism was probably accidental or subconscious. By divorcing Calvinist concepts from Calvinist morality, Z Nation creates something unique, a theological framework that operates independently of traditional religious behavior. In Calvinism proper, it's literally impossible to divorce the two in a coherent way. If Calvinism is true, grace is irresistible, the saved are truly saved, And it's impossible to be saved and yet not grow in that salvation as demonstrated by your morals. But that would be a very different show. In the end, Warren and Murphy's relationship becomes something unique in television. It's not romantic. It's not purely friendly either, but a bond forged through shared transformation. They're partners in an apocalyptic passion play, supporting each other through transformations neither of them chose, but both had to endure. Though it wouldn't make sense for them to be lovers, I can admit that. I still think it's a shame, given how suddenly smoking hot Murphy became in season 5. When did this happen? Was it the red tint? The facial hair? I don't know. But he went from meh to meow. Oh my God. And I think maybe if not for Cooper, Roberta would have had to have noticed. I certainly did. The show's signature mix of slapstick violence and genuine pathos served as the ideal thematic reinforcement, even across 5 13-episode seasons. When you're dealing with heavy concepts like predestination and human depravity, sometimes you need a zombie baby or a cannabis-powered zombie to lighten the mood. After all, if we don't have any control over who lives or who dies, who's saved and who's damned, we might as well have some fun with it.